y'all, it is Nikki. Welcome back to the channel. It is book review day. Full disclosure, I know it says book review, but I don't enjoy doing true book reviews as much as I enjoy just talking about the things that I really like in books. It's just more fun for me, especially with indie stuff. I did a video somewhat like this for Rook a couple weeks ago. You can find that right here. But I think I also have done just like true reviews at least once. I think it was for Effie Jo Stock's Child of the Dragon Prophecy, which you can also find right here. This past week, I finished World Saving and Other Disasters, which means that I can finally do a video on these first two books in Bethany Meyer's series, Robbing Centaurs and Other Bad Ideas. I found out about this series on Instagram. The author and I are part of the same like little writers community kind of thing, so that's how I discovered her. I just find her Instagram marketing really engaging and fun. I thought it was really funny, and the more I saw of her book, the more intrigued I was, so clearly she is doing something right there because it worked on me. It was actually this author's sticker merch for her series that inspired me to start a little art project last week that I hope to share with you soon, so stay tuned for that. But Robbing Centaurs, here's the blurb. Wick the Tree Messenger is bound for success. His career as a messenger is better than it's ever been, and he's on the fast track to getting an even more important job as a counselor. But before he can succeed, word spreads that a thief is after the most powerful magic in Arrow, the Heatherstone, and stealing it piece by piece. To be safe, Wick is entrusted with moving one of the stones to a safer location. On his journey, Wick is overtaken by the thief himself, a seraph named Archer. But Archer's plans, as he explains them, are nothing like what everyone thinks. Wick doesn't know what to believe, but Archer seems so sure. Wick's options are limited. Ignore Archer and keep his piece of the Heatherstone out of potentially dangerous hands, or choose to trust the thief and the warning he brings. Something is coming, an ancient scourge that could destroy all of Arrow. All that stands in its way are an uncertain messenger and an untrustworthy thief. If he chooses wrong, Wick could lose everything. So right off the bat, I just want to say that those names, Wick and Archer, are dynamite. Especially Wick. I just think it looks great on the page. It's fun to say. Something about it I just love, and I think that that's actually one of the things that drew me to the series in the first place, is seeing their names in Bethany Meyer's like promo materials. I just thought they were really great names. That and the bro dynamic. I have so much appreciation. Like, I can't emphasize this enough. I have so much appreciation for the brother plot, where it's just like two dudes, besties, like brothers, going on a quest together and having each other's backs. Like, I think that is just the best trope. It might be my favorite trope of all time, and that's actually at the crux of like my big fantasy project too, so that's probably a big part of the reason why I was drawn toward this series. Because in a sense, and I don't want to get carried away down a rabbit trail here, but I feel like those kinds of friendship stories are like going extinct, because there's a tendency to make every friendship like sexual. I'm thinking of like Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, for example, as if just like standard bro friendships don't exist anymore, but they do. And that's why I really, really appreciated that dynamic in these first two books, because that's just, it's my favorite trope. And I think that we need more of that, just like really close friendships that are friendships. I saw what the kind of vibe was of the story on her Instagram. Was like, huh, like that's so interesting. It's not like this angsty kind of teen drama type fantasy. It's not like 17-year-old girl discovers she has superpowers and has to save the world type fantasy, both of which are great, and like we've all enjoyed stories like that, but it just felt very different, and I was very intrigued by it. Two unlikely buds going on a quest to save the world and having harrowing / hilarious escapades in the process. Sign me up. I'm not exactly sure what demographic the series is intended for, but for me, it feels like the perfect middle grade. Like 12-year-old Nikki would have been absolutely obsessed. And I mean, I'm 20 and I'm still kind of obsessed, so enough said. The books are clean. There's nothing like steamy or spicy. No swearing that I can recall. Violence is even like really tame. Like, battles do happen, but the way that the author conveys the battles is in a very like restrained way. There's no like gore or anything. Also, the learning curve is not terribly steep. Like, you don't need to be 3 books in before you figure out how the world works and where the story's going. Within the first few pages, you're like, okay, here's the world, here are the rules, here's what's happening, which is really nice sometimes. Like, especially this semester, I didn't want to wait to read them until I was done with exams. I was excited to read them, but I had all this school stuff, and like, it was no problem to do both. I don't always feel like a Wheel of Time book. The books are easy to get into, they move quickly, they're kind of bite-sized. That's in one sense why I think it would be really great for young readers, but I also think it's just good for any reader who just wants something like equally delightful but not quite as labor-intensive. Book 2, World Saving and Other Disasters, is also interesting in that it focuses more on Archer, whereas the first book focuses a lot on Wick, so it was really fun to kind of get more into Archer's head. The plot does slow down considerably in Book 2, I would say. Wick and Archer are kind of dealing with the aftermath of Book 1 and like trying to get things back under control, and it calls for a lot of politics, which, as we know, is very difficult to make exciting. But that said, the friendship plot makes some major like leaps and bounds ones I felt in book 2 that were very meaningful, that's another thing. I found it really interesting to see how this author wrote the dynamic between them as their friendship is like being tested. It felt realistic to me, like the dynamic of like two guys who are having feelings and like don't know how to deal with it. As a girl, I actually kind of struggle writing guy characters in that sense because I just want everyone to be like hugging and sharing their feelings all the time. But I don't think that that's necessarily the norm, and I want to be realistic. And so I felt like it was fun to see how these two figured out their friendship dynamic. I was taking some mental notes. Wick is like the thoughtful, conscientious, like planning ahead kind of character, whereas Archer is the punch first, think later character. Archer is also pretty funny, like he's very witty and sarcastic. I got a ton of amusement from him, especially in book 1. And humor is another thing that this series is just really built on. Like, serious things do happen, but quirky is very much kind of the tone of the series. So definitely pay attention to chapter titles as you're reading, because they're often like gems. My personal favorite was in the second book, and I hope I get this right. You can burn my eyebrows off, but I still won't be impressed. That's not a great chapter title. I don't know what is. Honestly, and this is probably gonna sound like super weird, but I'm semi-excited to have children just so I can read this series. I think these books almost give me a sense of nostalgia because it feels like this is exactly the kind of thing that I would have loved when I was first getting into storytelling. It's almost like this series is like the aesthetic for my young imagination when I was first figuring out how much storytelling means to me. And I think it would be a really fun like introduction to fantasy for young readers, so when I have kids, robbing centaurs. Plus, like, characters are growing in meaningful ways. There's like good lessons to be learned. God gives us all a story to tell, and I'm just really glad that someone is telling this one because it was a delight to read. That, I think, is like the best word that I can use to describe it. Plus, I staged it. Enjoy.